And welcome to Extra Hours, our third episode.
No, Grant, this is funny because we're getting started. I'm going to have you just pause for a second and then start over again because then we can clip the file. Because it was on me when you started talking. So we'll just
frozen.
That again.
That's good. I can clear my throat. And this is one of those moments that people are watching live. This is something that not everyone will see. So you're getting an exclusive
special.
Hello and welcome to Extra Hours. This is part of the OfficeHours.global network of shows, and it's the newest one. We're excited to be doing an evening, 6 p.m. Pacific is when we do it on a Monday night, which is a quite convenient time for me because I'm in South Australia, and so it's just gone 10:30 a.m. So I'm quite bubbly and excited to be meeting with people tonight. What we have is a few people. There's 6 of us in total, and we are all related in our interest of kind of media creation, production experience, and where that's all going. And that's the type of discussion that we're going to have tonight. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please go to officehours.global, and you can see how all this works, and you'll be able to join and be able to ask questions through Makana. Or if you just want to quickly throw a question in, then go to askofficehours.global. Is that right? .global at the end? .com. .global.
.global.
Askofficehours.global, and you can type a question in and we'll try to get to that. Now, the thing with Office Hours is that you can ask questions every day. We meet every day at 7 a.m. Pacific, and we're answering questions about production, creation, and tools and all sorts of things. And so if we don't get to your question tonight, that will likely can be answered tomorrow morning. So I'm going to introduce our panel very quickly. Our first and founder of Office Hours is Alex Lindsay. Alex Lindsay has a whole bunch of experience in a bunch of different areas in media production, and a couple of highlights would be working on Star Wars Episode 1 at ILM, did a bunch of radio as well. He's worked in the radio industry as well as on the air, and then lots of events and lots of live streaming of large events, and did lots with Google Hangouts as well, that then lots of those things that we learned has rolled into what we're doing today with Office Hours. Good to have you here, Alex.
Here.
Wick, who is in Emeryville, California, just near San Francisco. You can see San Francisco really from his house. And Chris has worked in he did lots of band mixing way back in the day, and enough to know what it's about. He then worked in lots of TV production in broadcast, seeing how all that worked, and then has spent a lot of his career being an editor in the truest sense, not just someone who edits, but someone who is an editor. And his tool of choice is Final Cut Pro, and is an expert in thus. It's nice to have you here, Chris.
How do you know you can see San Francisco from my house?
Yeah. And then we go up to Seattle, Washington, and we have Guy Cochran. Guy Cochran has worked in media production for many, many years. He has done lots of photography, and also video production, lots of camera work, basically has worked all around the camera, on all sides of it, including selling all of that production equipment, and has a lot of experience in retail, but also what that then has meant is the connection to all the people that he sells them to and sees what they're doing, and so has a particularly unique perspective on the types of people that are using this production equipment. So it's good to have you here, Guy. That's just a nod.
That's just a nod. Thank you.
Guy nodded. Okay, then we go down to the bottom of North America in San Diego. We have Bill Davis. Bill Davis, when you hear him speak, you know he's worked in radio for many years. Worked in radio, has that voice. videos creation and working in sort of the corporate world and the media requirements of a big corporate company, all the marketing aspects and the different video production and audio production that's required. And you can also find him as a narrator on some audiobooks in recent times, and is also a host on lots of the episodes of Office Hours. It's great to have you here, Bill.
Thank you. I feel like I should bring out my big radio voice for this, since that kind of introduction is part and parcel to that. Hi, everybody.
So I'm doing the introduction for the people that we've had on the previous episodes, but Craig comes to us as a new panelist this time, and so I'm interested to have Craig do his own introduction, because I'm interested in, you heard the types of things that I was saying there, Craig. What's your take of your kind of experience in your career?
My background is I'm a sound engineer. I've mixed everything from rock bands, whatever corporate events. I did a long stint of musical theater, doing Broadway style musical theater and plays and studio recording. And now I work for the Canadian Opera Company, doing the opera and ballet, doing both the live sound and their recordings. So that's the nickel, the Reader's Digest of mine.
That's the bullet points. That's great. Thank you. Nice to have you here. And so my idea with doing that introduction, which is a little different to what we normally do with Office Hours shows, we normally get straight into the questions. But my idea with that is to give you a little bit to see some commonalities between who we have here tonight. Just to fill in me very quickly, I have also done lots of sound engineering and continue to do, I mix an a cappella band that I travel around with once a year. We do a big tour, and so I get to keep my ear in on mixing sound. And then I work in lots of events, both in-person events and lots of online events with lots of people in Zoom and things like that. And so that's my particular area of interest. All right, so it looks like we have a couple of questions, and I'm wondering, Bill, I didn't set you up, but I'm wondering if you're able to read questions for us.
Sure. Happy to. Yeah. Nah, it's not a problem. Let's dive in. The first one comes from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. Chris wonders, Hollyland Venus Live is a fairly attractive box camera and has similar specs to others we've seen lately, but no NDI, has an Ethernet jack and HDMI out. How does it stack up, and would this fit in with smaller productions?
Guy, do you know anything about this?
I hadn't heard of this one. I'm just now looking it up.
It looks pretty interesting. It's a really interesting box camera. It's UVC. It does vertical or horizontal. It does do RTMP directly out, but it can be just a web camera that you can control from something like Zoom. The weird thing about it is they won't tell you what the sensor size is. The first thing I look at is sensor size. Like, I'm just like, hey, what's the sensor size? How you doing here? And pretty much at $1,000, there's no, like, it's gonna have to be a minimum of micro four thirds and really super 35 before I'm gonna consider it a viable camera. So like, I just need to see, like, at that price point at I'm using an OBSBot today. I think this is whatever, $200 or $300. I don't expect that. This is, I think it's a half-inch chip. It's either a half-inch or full, so I don't expect that to be there, but I do expect it at $995. So I think that the problem that they have is that they talk about the fact that it's a 12 megapixel sensor, that it's got cam man. They literally say everything about this camera on the website except for the sensor size, and that makes me wonder. It says it's a Sony sensor. It's a CMOS Sony. Like, I feel like you're gonna have to do a teardown to find out what it is, and my guess is that it's somewhere between half an inch and 1 inch, which again at $995 I don't think is a viable number.
I think that it's the most important stat or feature, technical spec, doesn't seem to be there, so that's hard.
I don't know if it's the most important for everyone. I mean, I think that for me, it's definitely an important number. I'm not sure if it is the number that's as important to everyone else, but I think that it does make a huge difference.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. And Bobby wonders, what SDD toaster is it that users recommend?
We're talking about like a
drive sled, I think. Yeah. So, Bobby, I look at these things as it's just a utility. It's about as, I think the actual one you buy is about as important as like what mouse pad you use. They're cheap. If you get one and it doesn't work, get a different one. This is what I have. Basically, I have one of these on my desk, and I can tell you it's worked every time I've wanted it to work. Some things to look for: the little door on the top has a little cutout in it, so that you could put like the little drives in. So you could use like SSDs or whatever the drive things. And it has two. You got to be careful. You can't eject one while one is working. It doesn't like that at all. But yeah, I mean, they're cheap. It's $35. Everybody should have one. That's how my archive system back here works. So every one of these boxes has a bunch of drives in it, and that's how we off stuff to put on a shelf for long periods of time.
spinning drives. You've got some spinning drives.
They are rusty spinners, yes.
Every year you pull them out and spin them around a little, make sure they still spin.
Grant, let's say that. Let's say we do that just like that, like you just.
That was amazing was someone talking about the 5 1/4 inch disc, the floppy disk, and they were just like, "This is it. This is the gold standard." And these 3 1/4, no, what was it? 5 1/4 and 3 1/2,
8 inch, and then there was the 3 1/4, I think.
Yeah, and the
3 1/2.
3 1/2 came out, and they were like, this is going to take over. And this guy was on the gold standard, and there won't be any.
This video you saw.
Weeks ago. No. Yeah, it was. But there's these retro ones that are just amazing, and just the idea. The thing that I thought about was, what is the storage medium that we're now just saying, oh no, this is all we need now, like SSDs, and there's something else that's coming.
The bottom line is, if you want to get into this, you're talking about cost per terabyte, dollar per terabyte, or dollar reduce like you use. What is the least expensive way that you can store a bunch of stuff? Our policy here is I don't charge you to store anything, but our rule used to be, if you see it on any monitor in our office, I have it. We would just ingest everything, like, oh, give me that drive. And we still save everything, except rendered files that can easily be re-rendered. But you can't beat like about I think we're still buying like the 6 terabyte spinners, OEM spinners.
Interesting. Yeah, because I think that, I usually look at where the hockey stick is on the cost, is usually right at the very bottom. And that's sitting like at like 12 terabytes right now is where it suddenly just goes like 12 to 14 jumps a lot faster than 10 to 12. So, that's where you see that. And, we kind of move to 12s is kind of where we put stuff on.
Fine. At a certain point, you also ask, so drives got bigger as resolution got higher. And if I was routinely doing all 4K or, God forbid, 8K projects, maybe 12 terabyte drives would make more sense. But I'm still doing most stuff with 4K footage outputting at 1080. So
my thing is that
going to lose if you lose a drive. And also, I will say, using this method in 17 years, we have at Slice, we have lost 1 spinner out of close to 300.
And you do you do primary and backup, or just 1 spinner per project?
Yeah, we do a primary and a backup. No, what we typically do is raw camera footage.
Sure we do.
Our philosophy is, and here's the philosophy, Alex, and you've heard this before, I don't charge you for this. This is for me, not for you. If I charged you for it, I would probably have a different strategy, but I don't charge for it. This just makes our life way easier. I'll also say that quite often, I would say 20% of the work I've done in 2024 is reloading sometimes 8-year-old projects and adding new disclaimers over them. Still today. And it's just like, yeah, we could do that. Whoa, we'll have to reload that. That's going to take a while. It doesn't take a while. And so it's super simple. And put in this little drive sled, I can actually take that project and run it as though it's on the RAID. It just doesn't work quite as fast, but it works plenty fast.
We had at Pixel Core, when we closed, we realized we hadn't really been paying attention, because part of our setup all the time was just part of the storage budget was to have the SSDs that we need to record on site and the drives that were required to back it up, and that was just part of the overall budget that we did for a lot of shows. There was just like a line item that was like, I don't know, it depends on the size of the show, but it'd be like $800 for storage, and it was just like a number that was inside of a $200,000 budget, right. And so as a result, we ended up with a lot of SSDs, because we would for any major project, we just buy new SSDs for all the records, and then we'd back these up. Well, when you do 3 to 5 shows a year for quite a bunch of years, and there are a lot of ISOs, we ended up with 2,000 drives, and wow. and so, and the thing is that, but what would happen is we had a full-time archivist, so he just sat there and we just drop a stack of drives in, and they would get ingested, and they were ingested into the system same way that you do it. You scan the drives so that you have the directories, and then you put them on the spinning drives, and you put the spinning drives into a little case, you put a little number on the outside, and then you're done. And they go away. And then he had a schedule to do a search. It was just, and it wasn't really a time schedule, but about every 6 months or 8 months, he would just do a search on every drive.
To tickle it.
Just to tickle the drive to make sure it's still running. And then and it was just like he would literally put it. So when he was waiting for us, he'd put drives in and hit and search for something, and then put them back. And it was just kind of like what he did while he, in the slow time. Yeah. And so as a result, again, like you worry about it, and every project that we had was a primary and a backup, because it was just for us, it was the drives were a small number. So it was, and so small cost. And so they all had primary and backups. We never lost a drive. Like the only time we dropped drives when we started drilling holes and hitting them when we were closing the company. So anyway, and then of course, someone just came back to me and asked me for something 12 years ago, and I was like, no, I don't, because it's different company, different, like we closed down, and so all of that's gone, and but it was and they were just looking for it for an event this fall. To your point, having that makes you look like and for many, having that makes you look like a hero when you can just snap it, because it would take us any file that you asked for. If you told us what the project was and we could tie it back to the project number, we could find it in 15 minutes. Like just, like it would just 15 minutes and I've got whatever you were asking for. And I used to have a dream of having a huge drive system that instead of storing them in cases, you just put them in this giant wall, and it would you would just schedule downloads, just schedule when you want it, and it would just slowly push them onto your online storage, just going, but the idea is it's a giant RAID that only runs one drive at a time, and it just pulls goes and finds the files and puts them in a folder that you requested.
Sort of a modified JBOD.
Yeah. Just giant, but like with hundreds of drives, and it would schedule the idea was it would schedule all the little, every once in a while it spins up.
So basically put your archivist out of business.
No, because you still have to have someone put it into the system.
Oh, somebody still has to push the drive into its slot.
Well, they know. Yeah, I mean, no, they have to take the drive. You have to take the files that someone. The key is having an archivist means that your production people, you don't have to trust them to do anything. You give them a file naming structure, which, by the way, file names so useful. So anyway, but file naming structure and a folder structure that you want. They give them back that way, but they don't have to figure out how they get on the drives or how they're scanned or whatever. They just drop the drives off on a desk that's sitting in a special place in his room, that just sits there, and then he ingests them and then hands us back all the SSDs. They're all, that was the way to.
We used to put our drives on the handrail of the stairs. This is the magic place where it has to get archived. The other thing, and I'll say this real quick, the number one thing that kills a spinning hard drive is what they call stiction. And stiction is just the platter hasn't spun in a while and it doesn't want to spin anymore. And I will tell you that I have saved multiple drives in my career by taking the hard drive, turning it upside down, so the shiny part is on the desktop and the little circuit board is pointing up. And then you take two opposing corners and you just give it a little spin. I call it turtling. It spins on its back and then you grab it. And that much inertia usually bypasses the stiction and that drive will mount. No problem. I've done it several, I can say several times.
I have a whole shelf full of old drives that I'm going to go through. Like some are in cases, some are not in cases. I'm going to try your stiction, your turtling, because some of them have been sitting there for like 15 years, but I was like, there's nothing on these drives that I really care about, but I got to look, like, can I get them to come back on? It's kind of like, and then I'll just back them up to something because now because they're all a whole bunch of like 500 gig drives and 1 terabyte drives. So I'm like, I can put them all on one thumb drive.
Well done, Bobby. You've asked a good question that everyone has an opinion on. Bill, what's your drive status?
I'm starting to twitch listening to this because I've had so many of those over the years, and it just struck me. The first thing I wanted to do was reach to the screen to Chris's machine, turn it around, and see what's back there. Is there is there like a Centronics 50-pin port back there, or is there a USB device port, or is there
USB 3?
Which era? USB 3. Okay, so that's relatively recent.
Which is as fast as the 72. The thing is, the USB 3 is as fast as the spinning drive. So you don't need anything faster than USB 3 because the spinning drive is
No, it's just a matter of where do I have to go look for a connector and a cable and a power supply and all the rest of the accompaniments that have been out of my life now for 15 years.
The best part is when you can't find a toaster, you just buy another one because it's like 3 coffees. It's like it costs like 3 coffees to have another toaster, and you buy another one. I don't know where that one went.
Thankfully, the last one left my life some years ago. They will not be back. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I believe the typo there was SSD that he was asking about. One of the things that the G-Tech line has is this is an 8-bay and 6 of them are in a RAID, but I have 2 slots here that I can pull out, and they make SSD little caddies that I can drop in. So some of these are made by G-Tech or Adamus, and they're meant to just drop right in. So if you're shooting with an Adamus or a certain drive, it'll just drop right in. But these pop out, and you can put whatever you want in there. The benefit of this is that it's super fast. So it's Thunderbolt, so it's not USB 3. So that's really cool.
I put SSDs in this caddy all the time. Okay.
And by the way, if you are doing lots of SSDs, remember that Blackmagic has a Thunder or a USB-C with 4 SSDs, and you can just push all the SSDs into it and then connect them and then hit copy. You just copy them all onto your RAID or whatever when you're getting ready to work. So you bring all your camera files in, and you can use more than one. So you can stack them up and grab all your ISOs, and then you pull them all over, and it's still the limit. It's the USB-C connection, but it means that you're not sitting there managing those files. Like you just hit move and then go to lunch and come back, and they're all there.
Alex, I really get the sense that what you want is. Sorry. I think.
No, go, Craig.
I think what Alex has been describing is he really wants the tower from Rogue One.
Tower from Rogue One. Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
That's the solution.
Yeah.
It'll still be full in 2 years.
So now that's all we have time for. We've talked about backup, and that's taken the whole show.
It's a different show. Like we can just do one question per show.
That's right. So I tell you what I do. I use Dropbox. I've got 30 terabytes available to me on Dropbox, and the best thing they did, in my opinion, was when they stopped saying it was unlimited and actually said, "No, this is what it is." And so now it's like I feel more confident now. I've got about 18 terabytes on Dropbox. Very happy with it. I get super fast speeds, and my whole workflow works really nicely.
How much does that cost you a month?
It costs just over $2,000 Australian a year.
Oh, okay.
It's really not bad, and it's all just based on users, right? Like it's a couple of hundred users. It's very reasonable, and the thing that I like, the syncing apps work really nicely on Mac and PC. and I was at an event on site recently. I was just taking recordings of a conference, putting them onto a Blackmagic cloud store, which is logged into Dropbox. And so the cloud store itself was doing the transfer up to Dropbox at 800, 900 megasecond. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm perfectly happy with this. This was worked brilliantly. And then that would then end up syncing to some other devices and people off site that were then doing editing. And so that's my
I have to admit,
strategy.
I keep assets on a lot of assets in cold storage on frame.io. So I don't keep it on online storage. Now, the key, by the way, is to make sure that you make a project for everyone that you might want to de-archive, because you have to de-archive all of it at one time. So you don't want to have a general like Omni file that you're going to now put into archive. Create little folders and put them all in there. These are all the things that a client might ask for. But I will say, I have a client that asks for a lot of stuff from old shows pretty often. And being able to just grab the folder, pull it up and out of archive and put it in there and then send them a link, it's great. Like, it's just like, okay, we're done. And then when they're done, when they have it, I say, you got it? And then I put it back into archive. And it's not, it's not the least expensive way to do it. I will say Frame, the one thing about uploading to Frame is it's all the internet. Like, whatever you have, there is no, like, whatever you have, connected, it's just like, I'm just going to use everything that this copper will support. And so it's fast. And I'm glad that Dropbox has gotten faster, because my experience with Dropbox was not that it was fast.
Yeah, no, I definitely have seen that. And actually I heard both you, Alex, and Bill talking about Vimeo and get it slow to get files up to Vimeo. The thing that I do, my workflow with Vimeo all the time, is the integration from Dropbox. So things go up to Dropbox really quickly, and it can be.
I gotta talk to because my wife does a lot of stuff with Vimeo, and it drives her crazy that it's so slow. So you can push it up to Frame, and then just move it over to Vimeo, and it's instant or close.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, same server. So they just change the pointers to the location, and it's virtually like a snap. At least it used to be that way, because we used to do that as content distribution. We'd put it in our Frame account, and then we'd use the Vimeo Pro account to publish it out to websites, and it was always instantaneous to move it over.
I've always said that I use Vimeo a lot, and I say that I've never had any problems with their on-demand content. The only problems I've ever had is with their live streaming, and I still use their live streaming from time to time because it's super cheap and it just works. But yeah, the on-demand, their CDN for the on-demand just works great. And
I do have one little note about Dropbox, and that was I remember trying to get out of the account that I had there and trying to detach it from my computer in terms of the deep hooks that were in there was very difficult. I actually had to go find a specific uninstaller because it had put very deep links down almost to the machine code, it felt like. I think that's one of the reasons it works well, is because it's heavily integrated into your computer. But that just means that getting rid of it, should you ever decide to, is not as easy as just throwing files in the trash. You have to really go in and uninstall. So just note that.
Yeah, that's true. Just finally on Vimeo, there's an API call you can specifically do to say, take this URL and download it directly. So you're just pushing it and say, take this URL and put it in Vimeo. And so then it's using their servers in the data center to pull that down, and it's super fast. And so that's essentially what it's doing in the background when it's pulling from Dropbox or Frame.io. It's actually just going and getting itself, rather than you uploading. You're asking Vimeo to download for you, and so it processes it, and it happens within minutes. It's there, and then they do their own process. So. All right, let's get to another question.
Chris Fenwick in Emeryville, and here on the panel asks this one. I heard through the grapevine that Leo Laporte closed down the Twit House. What does this mean about the state of tech broadcasting? And ignore this, he notes, if my grapevine is broken.
Alex, what do you know?
Well, I do think that Leo's talked about that he's going more into the cloud. So they're definitely looking at, and taking up less infrastructure and being more efficient. And I think that it makes sense. One of the things about, there's a lot of overhead to having the Twit House. It's something that a lot of podcasters don't have. They don't have that overhead of paying for this rent and paying for all those servers and paying for all that. And again, like, we're moving. I think 090 is moving to the cloud. So we're not going to rebuild physical infrastructure to do virtual events. It's this show that turned us around. I mean, obviously many people, like half people on this panel and Jeff and, everybody who's running the show today have been pushing me this way. And I've said for years, eventually we'll go into the cloud. Well, we've decided that at least for Own I Know, we're going into the cloud over the next 3 months. And so I think that it makes sense. And I think a lot of it makes sense because the tools have matured a lot, so I think you had to be pretty techie to get the tools to work a couple of years ago, like Jeff or Jonas or Guy or many others, Grant, that I think that we've kind of turned some corner. I think last NAB, we really turned the corner where whether it's the audio tools, the video tools, the distribution tools, a lot of those things have gotten to that point. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Leo to take on going into the cloud. I also think there's a lot of challenges in podcasting and broadcasting in general because I think that Spotify kind of, in my opinion, kind of spiked the system. Which is that they thrashed the system with a lot of money, pulled a bunch of people out, and suddenly everyone was looking for something different, and all the advertisers are looking for something different. But also, there's this thing about micromanaging how long people listen and whether they listen to it or not. The reality is most podcasts are a lot more valuable than people give them. They're a lot more valuable than a 35 CPM or a $50 CPM. They really should be more like 80, 100, 120, $150 CPM because there's such a personal connection with the podcaster, with their listener. But you can't ask for that because advertisers don't understand that number. And so being able to have it be not super accurate, but only be $35 CPM or $50 CPM kind of made sense. With this hyper precision, it's taking all the fat out of the system, and it just makes a lot of podcasts not as viable. And it's not just Leo, and so it's like the winter. It's just a matter of making sure you have enough food stores that the house is small enough to heat. And so I think Leo is moving to where a lot of us, when I started, Pixelcore was a membership, and so I think Leo's going back to where a lot of folks find works, which is people paying for what they care about, and so I think you're going to, but you have to kind of restructure that and then build up from there. And so I think, and he's doing a little bit of both. And so I think what they're doing is long overdue and very welcome, to what we're doing there.
Yeah, I have the experience. I last year I paid for the Twit Club for the year because it was just super easy just to do an annual. I just want to do it, and so then it came around to the renewal, and they said we're not doing annual because we're not sure what it all looks like. And it really turned me off. I was like, I just don't want to have that monthly subscription hitting, my expense account. I just want to do it once. But then, and they sent some comms out about it. And then I got another one that kind of explained it a little bit more. And then when that happened, I wrote to Leo and I just said, just from a subscriber's point of view, I really wanted annual. And, but when you explained about, you're not sure about what it looks like and that the monthly actually helps, then I was happy to suck it up and do it monthly because I know that it will make a difference on their end. And I said that Twit has been a companion for me for most of my life. I remember where I can remember like being able to, what do you mean? Chris, you need to respond with that face.
How old are you?
Right. So I'm
would have to be under 40
in November. Yeah. Oh, no.
Well, Twit's 20 years old. No?
Yeah.
So
it's close.
Wow. We're getting a technicality.
Very
all right. I'm sorry. It's just math.
So
I mean,
thanks.
At least we could do math right? Am I
So
wrong?
we've got the Fenwick fact checker. It's good
That's
that he's doing the math.
to go along with the lower Fenwick and the Fenwick framer, the Fenwick checker.
The Fenwick fact checker. Thank you for correcting me of a couple of years. My point still stands that for a lot of my life, Twit has been a companion for me.
Much better.
Thank you. So and Leo responded and said thank you. Like it was as in it was like that idea. But I was just looking at photos of the cottage, the Twit cottage, and there's something, and maybe it's just nostalgia, but there was something about that kind of, here's this cool little space and everything's happening here and Leo's pushing buttons, and it's, it was like, that was kind of the heart of the podcasting thing. And then I visited the studio and stuff as well. That I saw the brick house, not the current one. And amazing. It was amazing to see that and the journey of that. But I wonder if it could actually return back to kind of the cottage.
Well, I think that's
days.
where he's going, and it's going that way, and I think it's also going to be even more that, right? Because it's going to, now it's in the cloud, so it's literally Leo's going to be running a show, in the cloud, and so he just has his head end, and then somebody can control it. I mean, that's the that's the wonder of this. We realized we just didn't have the capacity today to run this show. And I asked Jeff over the weekend, I was like, Jeff, can you do this? And he's like, sure, I got it. and that's kind of the wonder of the process.
Yeah. Chris, apart from fact checking me, did you have something to share?
Well, you bring up a good point, because if we go back 20 years, not quite half of your life, when people thought about starting a business, that's what you did. It's like, well, I'm going to need some space, and whether it's a storefront or an office on a floor of a building or a floor of a building or whatever, you had to do that. And Leo started with just that one room in the cottage, and then eventually, I think he took over the whole cottage, didn't he, Alex?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, and then I have very fond memories of the day that he did the live walk down the street to the brick house. That was really fun. It was like, oh look, the nerds are having a party. That was a fun day. But yes, today so much of our infrastructure is cloud-based that, I'm doing what I do in 80 square feet in the corner of a studio apartment. It's just a different way of thinking of what a business is.
And I think that what's really interesting is you look at a lot of folks in office hours, and really we were talking about this in another meeting, of how much you're just thinking about, do they have good connectivity and power? Like, that's kind of like the only thing we care about. Like, where they are is not that big of a deal anymore. We don't think about that. We just, because they're going to get tied into comms, they're going to be on the thing, they're going to do, they're going to all be in the cloud, and you just don't think about, where everybody is anymore, other than when they're going to be awake. and a lot of times there's a lot of advantages to having it run. We've had shows that are running, I've had shows where I've worked, 72-hour shows, and we just hand it from one team to the next, across time zones, and they just take over and just keep running, and it's cool.
I was talking to Tucker the other day, and we were doing a show, and he's still running base camp out of the same corner of his master bedroom that we remember from the beginning of the flu season, or I'm sorry, the pandemic, where, he was joining the show from.
Right.
Yep. We're seeing a lot of it. I'm in my garage here and quite happy to.
Your garage is way bigger than I expected. I saw you run back there while we were talking. You got to get for some reason I thought that those monitors, I don't know why, but I thought that they were somewhat close to them. Close. It's really deep. Like, it's like 3 or 4 meters behind you. I mean, it's
full.
It's got quite a control room there. We've got lighting, and that's come a long way since we started.
It definitely has. Yeah, I realized that I had a monitor on that was bleeding, and so I was like, I'm getting a lot of bass response from these in-ears, and it was not that, it was a monitor. I just wanted to note, there's David Brady said the Fatwick Fen Checker, like that. Fatwick, Factwick, yes.
The Factwick.
But then CJ talking about going up to $25 a month for Twit because of how much a service it is to him, and that's awesome. And Rion is at 38, so most of his life. Thank you. I should have said that. It's most of Rion's life. And Oliver talking about, remember, visiting the cottage and being on the show. Yeah, it's not surprising that a lot of office hours groupies are somewhat tied to the Twit network as well. And lots of us came through knowing Alex from MacBreak Weekly, and and so there's I think we've all got a history there. So, all right, next question.
Using a digital audio workstation for live events, what DAW would someone start with? Initially, I was thinking Reaper or Logic Pro. The context is a church. One mix will be for sound reinforcement and another mix for the live stream.
Craig? What do you reckon?
I wouldn't. I really, really wouldn't. I would look at some of the purpose-built software if you have to go software. I know we've talked about a bunch of them through the show. The one that I had in my mind just slipped out of my mind, but I know it's the current one that we've been looking at. One of the problems with using a DAW is, first of all, that's not what it's designed for. You've got all kinds of things that it just can't do. Some of them can if you really tweak them hard, but even simple things like being able to solo or PFL a channel that's live, if you want to do that without screwing up your mix, you can't. So if you're trying to listen to something that's coming up to make sure that the mic is working or that the signal is good, you're not going to have a chance to. And building two separate mixes is even more awkward and confusing. So if you can't get physical hardware for whatever reason, look at some of the specific live software mixers.
So specifically, Craig, what would you say the key purpose of a DAW is then?
It's for recording and mixing recordings.
Right.
It's not for live inputs.
Yep.
Like I said, the functionality is completely different.
Yeah, and I know that we had Mickey on last week. I'm sure Mickey, would say that you can do it. Like you said, Craig too, right? Like he's done some crazy amount of live processing audio through Pro Tools, and has been able to make it happen. But it's often the tool that we could have Chris talk about woodworking and what's the optimal tool to use, and then what is the tool that you do use because you know it better and you can run it, make it work. I use Pro Tools because I know Pro Tools, but I know that some other tools could be better for it. Alex?
Yeah, and I would agree with Craig. I work on shows that get mixed in Pro Tools, so it's not that but even with people who are experts, especially as that system gets more complicated, Pro Tools does some funky things. It's not built for this. Like, you can do it, but just because you're doing it does not mean you should do it. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can use. And again, if you're someone like Mickey who knows it really, really well, Mickey can do that kind of thing, and most likely have it turn out perfectly. But I've seen Pro Tools, it just thumps out for a second. Like, it goes, I'm going to reset because my clock isn't right or whatever. A live mixer doesn't do that. doesn't do that. Doesn't go, I'm going to reset everything because I don't like where I'm at, which is something that in some systems I've seen happen pretty often, and so a live mixer really wants to be live all the time, have a lot of the stuff there. I think Llama Audio is the one that we had on last week, but there's a lot of other ones that we're looking at to do those, and so Llama is one of them. And so, but that kind of mix bus we had on years ago. So those are software, but I would definitely lean towards a software live mixer over over using a DAW for a show. Like, again, especially if you're getting started. Like, if you know Pro Tools really well, and this is this this is the hammer for everything, like his Pro Tools, then that makes sense. But I think if you have a choice, I think I would go with a software mixer before I used a DAW.
So, and especially they're talking about making multiple mixes for,
exactly.
For
this gets really complicated
for the audience and for a stream, and that's just like, first of all, those should be two different mixers entirely, if at all possible, and ideally.
And with a software mixer, I think you can make that work. And sometimes you don't want. I mean, you probably know better than I do, but a lot of times we run multiple mixes on the same one. There's some advantages because you're trimming your audio, you're trimming your inputs or whatever, and that goes out to both, but you're still making the mix that you need for both shows.
Sure, but if you're mixing for a stream and in the room, you don't want those two to be being mixed in the same physical location. You want to have the stream being mixed somewhere outside of the live environment if you can, just to be able to hear it in isolation.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Yeah, agree with that. 1F Jeff said the answer is Llama Audio. DM me about it.
Yeah, that was the one I was thinking about.
1F Jeff, just stay focused on what you're doing there, please. Keep out of the chat. You've got one job, all right? We also had Tim was saying a real physical mixer is easier for the use for the majority of volunteer operators. And I think that's a really interesting point because there is some flexibility on. Hang on, Alex. There is some flexibility on the using software and using different controllers for it and things. There is definitely someone who doesn't have a production background at all, pointing to this fader does this and this fader does this, and that's what we want to do for live reinforcement. And then for the live stream, to Craig's point, having someone on some sort of device, an iPad or a computer, can do software based to do the live stream.
And I have to say that the way I'm editing gray matter with Mimo Live has totally poisoned my brain. And then when I talk to people about it, like I was telling Andy that, I was like, I've become obsessed with, mission specific interfaces. And Andy showed me something he did with Victor like 3.5 years ago. And he goes, yeah. Like, that he built this OSC control for Victor's a complete interface that someone can just log into. The show that we do normally for office hours is a specifically designed interface that runs our show, and we're able to abstract the complexity so that someone can actually do that effectively. And so I think that is the to me where I'm really going with a lot of stuff that I'm working on is if I'm doing the show over and over again. Now, if this is a one-off, I want to have an A1 who knows how to use a hardware piece board, board or whatever. But if I'm doing something over and over again, like a church or education or business or roundtables or whatever it is, within 2 years, everything I do is going to have, whether it's running a piece of hardware or a piece of software, it's all going to be running it's an interface designed for that thing. Like when I do, it's because I use it every week for gray matter. I have an iPad and I just tap on the buttons that I needed to do it. It does all the things I need to do. Mimo is a pretty complex interface to look at. And with that interface, I don't have to think about it at all. I just click on the big buttons and they do the thing. And it's totally, and it works well. And I like it much better than, I like being able to design the whole layout on a screen. And right now I'm learning Pilot OSC. I was playing with Touch, and then Andy recommended Pilot. And then I opened it up and I was
Of course, Andy came out with a tool you'd never heard of. That's amazing.
Well, the funny thing is I'd already downloaded it. I'm sure I had some other conversation with Andy like 3 years ago, and Andy must have told me about it. And because I had already paid for it, downloaded it. It was just like the little cloud with the arrow. Like, yeah, you did this before.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to note here. I agree with you, Alex, particularly for vision switching. For vision switching, where you're going from one thing to another, I think absolutely, and where your audio is relatively consistent. Mm-hmm. When you're doing live audio on a stage and you've got lots of different people coming in, mm-hmm. then you're going to need faders of some description.
Yeah.
And because you need to ride those. And I still think that no matter what changes with different interfaces, the concept of pushing up and pushing down, I think, is still valid. Now, I choose to mix when I do live sound for the a cappella band. I choose to mix on an iPad, and it doesn't matter what's in the venue now. I have an MR18, which is the Midas version of the Behringer XR18, and that's what I mix on. And I like using Mixing Station, amazing app. Mixing Station, I'm able to design the interface. To your point, Alex, my interface is designed exactly the way I want it, with my faders nice and tall, and all of my effects engines and everything is all. I don't have to go looking through menus or pressing different screens. Everything that I need is in one screen, and it's perfect for that. Yeah. But the faders is the key thing. So then, Tim makes a good point, and that was who's building that. Who's building the interface? Who's building a custom UI, and are they doing that for the church? Ideally,
and that's the challenge. And again, the other challenge is that with churches, there is an advantage to letting people play with big hardware, and not. They don't want it to be. Sometimes a lot of your most dedicated volunteers don't want it. They're there to learn how to use that board, or that camera, or that switcher. Like I was at a church and I was standing in the back talking to the guy. I was talking to the guy about it. He's got a CL5. He's got these big JVC cameras. He's got a carbonite switcher like in the church, and I was like, wow, this is really nice. And it's not a big church. I mean, it's big. I mean, they've got 400 or 500 people, but it's not massive, you know. And he said, yeah, it's a lot easier to get the volunteers both to come and to stay. He said because and they're willing to do a lot of things for a long time before they get to touch the big board, because it's a big board and everybody wants to use it and everyone wants to get good at it and everyone wants to learn it. So there's other things to think about when you think about, like, if you are just getting people to help you do something, then the abstraction makes sense. If you are trying to get you know, people to come and stay for a long time and develop their skills and develop their professional skills using your hardware, then giving them direct access to the hardware makes a difference.
Yeah, it does. Oliver's saying that Mimo Live remote control surface has sliders for audio levels. I have no doubt, Oliver, and if it didn't, it would have had it by the end of the day.
How have I not used that? Oliver, thank you. I don't know why I didn't put that in my interface.
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
Of course
tomorrow I'm going to be adding
about
like sliders, yeah.
Multi-touch on the iPad. Multi-touch is a thing because you might want to make multiple changes at the same time. So that's interesting too. Bill, you got something on this? Oh, go Greg.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've seen a shift. When I was in radio back in the old days, there was a lot of a processing change, you know, Symmetrics 528s and things like that. You wanted to add a little compression and this and that. When we started on office hours, I was surprised because over the course of the first couple of months, we removed everything from everybody who was coming in. And instead of a process sound, we were just going for as natural as is humanly possible. You start with a decent sounding room and a good mic, a good professional mic, and that's about it. Now, maybe if you have a fan noise and something like that, we'd put on a little noise assister, in my case, Cedar or something like that, to get some of the background noise down. But other than that, and not only has that worked for me on the web shows I do like this, but for audio narration, when I'm doing the book work, they don't want anything either. So this system works perfectly for that. All the audio, almost all of it, I'm producing except for an occasional spot that goes to air where I am adding a little bit of compression because you really want that forward sound for those. Other than that, I'm just sending out dry audio mixes to everybody. And then maybe somebody at the back end who's looking for a particular sound profile for their export will do a little something. I know Mickey probably does something for the audiobook stuff that I do. But outside of that, there's just no EQ, no compression, no major limiting or things happening anymore. And that's different than it used to be for me. So it's something to think about. Clean, I think, is the easiest signal to listen to over long periods of time. And for something like an hour or 2 hour show like this, and certainly for an 11 to 15 hour audio book, you don't want anything that'll fatigue them at all. Just a note.
Yeah. Craig, you said something quickly?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to jump back in. I remember distinctly the first time I was using an iPad to control a Yamaha console back in the, I guess, M7s. And it was great just to be able to walk out in the middle of it was a corporate event, walk out in the middle of the event, take care of what needed to be taken care of during sound checks or whatever, and be able to move around because, of course, being a corporate event and a small one, they wanted us, all the tech table was behind the screen, which is a great place to mix from. So yeah, that freedom. The other point I was going to just throw real quick is that talking about mixing on, computer primary OSs, most Digicos are running on a Windows embedded machine. So the underpinnings of a Digico ST7 is Windows embedded. So it's how you build that interface, going back to the earlier comment.
Yeah, wow. Chris was going to add something, but he got bored and he wants to move on. So
my fault, Chris. Sorry.
Let's go to the next question.
Next question comes to us from Zach Jeffers in Spokane, Washington. What are everybody's favorite motorized fader banks for use with cloud production and audio mixing? Looking at the Behringer X Touch Compact, but wondering what everybody else uses.
Guy?
Yeah, so for price point and ease of use, depending on what you're using, we're using vMix. So with central control, we had Joe, he did up this nice interface where this what you're seeing is the X Touch with the extender as well. And this is what it looks like when you have central control running. And basically these faders can be flying around wherever you are in the world if you can VPN in. To me, these feel really cheap. Like when you come from something like that has Penny and Giles faders, it feels robust and smooth. The X Touch is kind of a joke in some ways. You're just like, man, this does not feel like quality stuff. But for a couple $100, it's definitely a good value. So other ones might be from Icon, but again, it just depends on what it is that you're trying to interface with. Again, like the big stuff like Sound Devices CL16 that has those Penny and Giles. When you get used to doing that stuff day in and day out, you just get a feel for how much push and how much travel those have. And so it just depends on what you want to do and how much time you want to spend programming it. If you don't have somebody like Joe DeMax to go ahead and build that template for you.
Craig?
Yeah, I've got the 9 fader X Touch as well. I agree. It's not like I cut my teeth on CAD-X with PNG faders as well. It's not that feeling. It is way better than a regular X32 though. But it's the functionality of it. I personally can't do without motor faders if I'm mixing audio. So it's a good thing for that. Price point's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I've noticed with the X Touch that it actually it feels different depending on the protocol that it's using. And so it's very different as a DAW remote for when I connect it to Pro Tools, to how it feels, to then how it is as a running the X32. The motors run differently, and it might be just kind of the resolution of the steps that it has in the software for how much there is. So, but it's such a great device. But I think like the Artist, I think it is, they look amazing. I'd like those. They're just way more expensive.
That's the what used to be Yukon or whatever it was. It's now the Avid stuff. So you're talking about the Artist?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
It's branded under Avid.
Just out of curiosity, when you're connected to Pro Tools, which protocol are you using?
I guess it's MIDI. Is it USB?
Yeah, because the X Touch has regular MIDI. It's got USB, and you can also do it over the network connection.
Yeah. Oh, I have to check. All right. Chris is directing. He's got bored.
Well, you're not sitting in the middle of the frame, and it's hurting my soul.
Look, so
there we go. Okay, we can go on. Next question, please.
We're all right. Oh.
I think there's a framer that we have somewhere. What's it called?
Next question.
I thought that you were pointing to next question. So let's do next question.
Go ahead, Bill.
Ash Yadev in New York City is up next. What's a good mixer for a 2-person band that can support vocals, guitar, keyboards, backing track, and drums? The band will be playing in bars and small venues and use the Venues sound system.
Fenwick?
Oh, we got Fenwick? Yeah, okay.
The Behringer XR18, and if you're fancy like Grant, the Midas MR18. Next question.
It's not the morning show. We've got to spend a half an hour on this question.
No, we're at the top of the hour, though.
I know we are about to wrap up. So, unfortunately, thank you. We had lots of good questions.
And by the way, Ash, if you want a more detailed answer, just ask that one again tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. Or ask on Wednesday.
We'll do a half hour. We could do a half hour on it, but we would have had to.
That's what this show is. This show. This is a different show than the morning show. The morning show is doot, 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 doot. This one we decided I think I'm actually starting to really grow on me. So
let me just say about the XR18, and that you would look at the Behringer range and you might see that, oh gee, it's fine for Chris to say it. As soon as I give it a little bit more, there's an XR12, I think, and I would encourage you to go up to the 18. And the key reason is the multi-track or multi-channel audio recording out. The USB is an 18 by 18 channels in and out, and that is particularly handy. So the reason that I have totally settled and just love the MR18, because I'm mixing 5 inputs, right, with an a cappella band. I have those 5 inputs, and I record them. I actually use Audition for this for the DAW, and so I do live recordings of every show. And so the next time, the next show, I do a virtual sound check. I'm sure Craig's very familiar with doing virtual sound checks. Amazing, right? Because you literally just switch the inputs from the XLR inputs to USB inputs, and now the same data that was recorded is coming back in at the same level and everything, and now I'm able to do a virtual sound check of the show with testing my effects. You know, I'm basically 90% checked by the time the band gets on the stage for their sound check. I'm already happy. And from a philosophy point of view, what that means is I'm there to serve the band, to make them comfortable, to be able to perform their best, rather than them serving me, which is often the case with sound techs, right? Where the band, I don't know, you do this now, and oh no, let's stop that song, I need to do this. You know, the sound tech starts running the sound check. I'm like, no, what can I do to make you comfortable? Because before you even got on the stage, I was already comfortable with the room. I've already done my tuning. I've already done a full sound check. I know what everything sounds like. So now how do I serve you and make you comfortable? So that moved on from just telling you which mixer to buy, but I couldn't recommend the XR18 enough, or the MR. The MR has higher quality mic pre's, and particularly 1 and 2. Channels 1 and 2 are the same as all of them. They're not a high impedance input on the MR18. So we went deep. So as we normally do, we're just going to go around the panel, have a content recommendation, a pick of a particular content, movie, a song, something. Have a quick think. Who's got one ready already?
It's not just because my brother worked on it, but Person of Interest is turning out to be pretty good. And yeah, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good show. It's very awkward. Like, it just makes you feel very uncomfortable a lot. So no, I'm just going to warn you ahead of time that it's intense. He made a lot of mistakes. so it's, and that's, I don't think I'm ruining anything there. It's from the original movie, but incredibly well shot, of course, because it's my brother's that shot a lot of it. It's an Apple, it's an Apple production, so it just oozes production value, and it's great acting, great writing, it's a great ride. So it's one of the best series I've been watching recently.
It looks good on Vision Pro as well. And I sent you a message, Alex. I said, this show is literally mind-blowing, and I don't think you knew what that meant. You now know what that means?
No, guy, I'm
you still don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
right.
It's
it'll make sense.
Yeah, it is. It's a really good show, and it is fun to watch. The funny thing is, now all the modern movies, I know people thought that film would never be replaced by digital, but you can really see the old films. Like when you open up a Vision Pro, you see the quality of the, of the video there. So of the film that's been scanned. I mean, it is what it is, and it's just, you just see it when you're watching it effectively at 200 inches all the time.
Right.
You're enjoying it. You're enjoying the Vision Pro, by the way.
I am. Yeah, I'm getting used to it. Yeah. One thing is I was trying to watch a movie last night in bed with no lights on, and it kept freaking out that it's like, oh, I can't see. I don't want you to see. I just want to watch this movie.
You can buy an infrared light that's about this big by this big, and you put it next to, just points out, and everything will work again, but there won't be any lights.
That's nice.
Yeah.
All right, Grumpy
I've got
Chris,
a song for you.
What have you got? Oh, okay, Bill. No, let's make him wait. He can be last.
Okay.
Go, no, I'm saying that to Chris. So you go, Bill.
Oh, you're saying that to okay, fair enough. I was wandering through YouTube a couple of months ago, and I came upon a version of Cortez the Killer, the song that has been around for a long time, done by Grace Potter and her band, Joe Satriani on guitar. But it was the trumpet player that blew me away. A guy named Willie Waldman I'd never heard of before. And so I have gone back and watched that, I think, 4 or 5 times now. And I just never do that with pieces of music. First of all, Grace is amazing, and I didn't know her well enough to know, but it's one of those circumstances where you're watching a band play an old standard and everybody just settles into it and is in such a perfect communication inside the band. And you can see this in the video. You can see Grace look and just listen at what Joe Satriani is doing and then listen to what this amazing trumpet player is doing. And they all just seem like they're having so much fun that you're really, gosh, I wish I was in, I wish I could just snap my fingers and be a good musician and be in that band for 10 minutes. And I think I would come away from that changed. So anyway, that's my recommendation for some weird little YouTube thing to take a look at. It's got graphics on top. It's a little goofy, but wow.
That's great. Craig, what have you got?
I got a couple, if that's okay. The first one is just I was subbing in last week on a tour of the Tina Turner musical that was coming through the city, and I got to say it's a very compelling show. Lots of fun at the end. The real one though is going back, I guess, 5 years. I watched it and just talked to somebody about this the other day. There's a show on Prime called The Capture, which if you haven't seen it, it's a very intriguing, suspense. But it deals a lot of stuff that we would talk about on office hours as far as video manipulation. I'll say no more. It's good though.
Okay, nice. Guy?
Yeah, there's a cool camera out there, the Venice. I know some of you guys have seen that camera before. Last week we were on a shoot, we had 6 of them, and I was talking to the rental manager at Able, and they've got 30 of them. So I was looking at one of their behind the scenes clips, and I'll put this link on YouTube, but he was talking about the Rialto, where this would be just amazing to have at NAB for our live, because you could put the camera on your back, and that's basically the body, but then you can use the Rialto, which is this little guy right here, and slap a lens on it, and then you could do handheld shots. And this would just be amazing to throw a prompter on this and then do some kind of easy rig or something like that. So it just got me really thinking. Here's the shot with the easy rig. You could see him doing this behind the scenes of a Netflix show called Last Chance U. But this is really worth watching and seeing how they run around with these Venices, because it is an impressive camera. We had it with the 25 to 1000 Fujinon DAWs. We had 4 of those $200,000 lenses. It was a TED event and a Bloomberg Green Fest. It was an amazing event to see the picture quality of this camera just knock your socks off. I mean, especially on the OLED 17-inch Sonys, it just looks spectacular. And each director, everybody had one of those monitors in front of them, and I was just like, wow, this is how it's done. This looks so good.
Nice. So I'll give you my recommendation, which is an album, an Australian album, an artist called Tina Arena. She's actually pretty big, and she was in Europe. She lived in Europe for a long time as well. But there's an album from '97 called In Deep. So it's Tina Arena In Deep, and the production level, particularly on the drum kit, I haven't heard a better representation of the drum kit than on that album. It just is so good, and I use it as kind of a couple of those tracks I use as the same tracks in every venue, because I know exactly what they sound like. And there's lots of sparkle and good bottom end, and it really tests out the systems. So that's my album recommendation. All right, as long as everyone else is done, we'll get to Chris. Chris, what have you got?
Wow. Okay, so I'm gonna recommend a YouTube channel which I've been watching extensively. My wife will tell you she's sick of it. It's called Motor Yacht Loon. And if you look at these little red stripes here, these are videos I've watched to completion, which is most of them. And I've only discovered this about a month and a half ago. It's crazy. So basically, it's a little bit of behind the scenes of what it looks like to live like a billionaire. This is a 220-foot yacht that cruises the Mediterranean and the Caribbean. It's got a crew of 18 people, one of which is a full-time media person. So if you're in your 20s and you know how to fly a drone, shoot a camera, and edit, this is a whole nother way of making a living. Like, what these people do is they'll put together a weekly sort of, this was your great vacation video for the guests on board, but they also strip out all of the private stuff, because they're dealing with, A-list celebrities and whatnot that don't want to be on YouTube like this. And then they do a version for the web. They also do all the social media. The Loon is and it's an extremely popular boat, partly because of their media campaign that they do. And it's super, if you're at all I used to live on a boat for like 6 years. If you're at all interested in boats, it's fascinating to learn how they maintain it, how they take care of it, how they do, when they do the crossings. They have to do 2 crossings a year from the Med to the Caribbean. They have 2 weeks that they just get to do maintenance. because they don't take passengers on that cruise. It's just the crew alone. So super fascinating if you're at all interested in boats. And it's boy, these people, billionaire is the job I should have signed up for in a career with my
It's
guidance
not
counselor.
too late, Chris. It's not too late.
I don't know. I think it is, but I tell you, it's fascinating. It's a beautiful boat. Very interesting.
That's great.
You learn everything about like how to put fuel in it, how they deal with. Is
it true, Chris? Chris, is it true when you buy your first boat, it's your second best day?
Boats are. I don't know if you know this, Alex, but boats are measured in three dimensions. There's the length and the width, and then the depth.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I think we're all wanting to sign up for the billionaire career. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're still working out the optimal runtime of this show, but there was a lot of really good questions there, and sorry we didn't get to them, but they're being pushed back, and you'll be able to just post them again for tomorrow morning. And it shows that the best questions win on this show particularly. So it's important to vote up those questions next time too. So I encourage all the people, there's been lots of people in the chat, I encourage you all now to jump into After Hours. We haven't had After Hours with lots of people in it for a little while, and so this is a great opportunity to have a little after party in After Hours and tell us what you think about this show. So make sure to join us in tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific for the Office Hours show every week. Every day, every week. And you'll be able to join us then. And then we'll be back on next week, 6 p.m. Pacific on Monday. We're hoping to do an All Vision Pro panel at some point. So we'll see how that goes coming up soon. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank everyone here, and Laura and 1F Jeff and other people that were working behind the scenes. Appreciate you making all this work. All right. Bye-bye.